Hi there, I'm Rex King. Welcome back to From the Archive. Today we're talking about My Fair Lady. My Fair Lady was directed by George Cukor and was actually based off a popular stage musical of the same name, which was done by Frederick Loewe and Alex J. Lerner. Their stage play is actually linked to another stage play, which was called Pygmalion, which was done by George Bernard Shaw. I'll get more into that a little bit later. Uh, but what's weird is the rights as far as the distribution for this film goes. So, technically, the stage play was distributed by CBS, but the movie rights were bought out by Warner Brothers. Jack L. Warner paid about $5.5 million for the screen rights, and that was an unheard of sum at the time. And he made the agreement that after 7 years, the rights would revert back to CBS. But since Jack Warner's name is all over the opening credits, it's fair to see why you won't find this on any streaming services because, well, Paramount's not going to be putting on a film that has Jack L. Warner's name all over it. Anyway, as far as casting is concerned, for the role of Professor Higgins, it was no doubt that they would get Rex Harrison, who played him in the stage play. However, for the role of Eliza Doolittle, they decided not to go with the actress who played her on the stage. That actress was Julie Andrews. Instead, they went with Audrey Hepburn because she had a much more notable name, and they felt they could market that more. Now, don't feel too bad for Andrews because this freed her up to, play in Mary Poppins as Mary Poppins. And she won an Oscar for that movie, so I'm going to go on a limb here and say she had the last laugh. But My Fair Lady was still a huge success at the box office and with critics. In fact, this film won Best Picture. And, well, has it aged well? Let's take a look at it. So, My Fair Lady, for those of you who don't know, follows Eliza Doolittle. She's a pretty much poor flower girl. She lives on the street, she lives in squalor, and pretty much is someone that society looks down upon. However, one night, by chance, she meets Professor Higgins, who is a expert in speech and even teaches phonetics to people from time to time. He makes a bold claim to her that he can make her sound like a duchess and even pass her off as one just by changing her speech. Later the next day, she goes to Professor Higgins and tries to take him up on that word. Higgins' friend, Colonel Pickering, played by Wilford Hyde White, who hears this, makes a bet with Higgins, saying that, hey, I don't think you can do this, but I don't think you can pass her off as a duchess. And if you can pass her off as a duchess as by the grand ball, state ball, I forget what it was called, and then I will pay for all the cost of the teaching for her. And Higgins takes him up on this offer to prove his point. And that's the general story of My Fair Lady. Now, upon watching this film, it's not hard to see why this won Best Picture. It is gorgeous to look at. The sets are really well done. Yes, there are times where you can clearly tell it's a set and not a location, and that does bug me occasionally, but I can understand with 1964 limitations why they had to do this film the way they did it. That being said, the costume work is really the standout here. Like, I love the costuming, and I is quite literally the best costuming I have seen in a lot of any musical from this time period. I really enjoy the overall look and feel. And the music numbers and the choreography are also quite extravagant and quite fun. All the music numbers are pretty good for the most part. There are a couple redundant ones, a couple songs that I skip on the soundtrack, but overall, they are all pretty decent for the most part. And the performers are all doing a fantastic job. Now, Audrey Hepburn was dubbed by Marni Nixon for her singing roles, with a few exceptions apparently. But Audrey Hepburn is still doing a fantastic performance. Marty Nixon's singing voice is spectacular for this role, and Rex Harrison plays Professor Higgins quite well, probably because he's so familiar with the character. And all the performers scattered throughout the film do a great job of what they're given. And here we come to the breaks of the scenario. So, yeah, in case you're wondering why I haven't talked about the story that much or the characters, well, that would be because I do not like them that much. Well, here we go. So let's start with my complaints on the story, and I'm going to be saying spoiler warning from here on out. If you haven't seen this, timeless classic that most people have seen, stop the video and go watch it, and don't have me spoil anything for you, because you shouldn't go into a film with spoilers. That being said, if you have seen it, or just do not care about spoilers, well, then you should know that the film goes in a romantic route with the relationship between Professor Higgins and Eliza Doolittle. This does not work, in my opinion, for several reasons. Now, I do want to bring up that the first half of the movie and the ballroom scene are all fantastic. I really enjoy the entirety of the first half, and the grand ballroom thing that they do, again, I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, is really brilliantly done, and I have no complaints about any of that. My complaints have to do with the random, oh my god, we're going to have these two have a romantic relationship and have feelings for each other, even though they definitely don't. So, what I mean by that is, Professor Higgins always looks down on Eliza Doolittle for the entire runtime of the film. And in the second half, we're supposed to believe that he looks at her a little differently, and that's enough for these two to have a successful relationship. Only problem is we don't really see that. The only thing we even get close to that is him singing about how he's used to her presence. And that's not love. At least not any love that I am familiar with. Now, granted, I am not an expert on love, but treating the person you're going to be with for the rest of your life as someone lower than you is a terrible relationship. And honestly, Eliza should just get out of that relationship and find someone else. In fact, she has a perfectly better suitor who's madly in love with her and would probably do anything for her in Freddy. A perfectly well-written character who she should have ended up with, in my opinion, because he's definitely a better person than Higgins, who looks down on everyone and treats everyone like they're below him. Even his good friend Colonel Pickering is someone he considers to be a little bit lower in stature than him. He doesn't treat anyone all that well. Now, that's his argument. He treats everyone the same. But shouldn't you be treating the person you're going to want to spend the rest of your life with a little bit differently? Instead, he treats her like a servant, and after she succeeds in the grand ballroom of convincing everyone that she's royalty, he's the one who claims that he did all the work and is the one who deserves all the credit, and doesn't give her any of it. And that, to me, was the ultimate slap in the face. Why the heck would Eliza choose him? And we're not given any reason. Their relationship has no pathos. Now, I know a lot of people are going to say, well, it's the 1960s. The leads have to end up together. You want to know who disagrees with that? George Bernard Shaw. Yeah, you remember Pygmalion? The play that the other play is based off? Well, guess what? That one does not end with Eliza getting together with Professor Higgins. In fact, George Bernard Shaw went on record to say that he did not want these two ever getting together. Whenever there was a movie adaptation of his play, he asked that it was never added dialogue to the end of the film. This shows that, yes, there are people who realize that these two should not have been together. Yes, I know that the main complaint about Pygmalion by critics was that they weren't getting together, but that was because critics at the time didn't like breaking new ground. And to be honest, this film had a chance to fix that, and it just didn't. It went with the more simple ending that everyone knows and loves, and is the wrong ending to do. Not only that, but if you're going to make the argument of, hey, this film needs a trope in order for it to hook its audience, well, I have a trope for you that it could have used. The love at first sight trope, because the first person Eliza meets is Freddy. So yes, there are tropes this film could have used to stay alive and stay relevant and gotten critics on its side, but instead it went with this really bad ending. And yes, I know it's directly based off a popular musical that had this ending as well, but that doesn't excuse the film or the play that's based off. If you're going to do a good movie that's going to stand the test of time, you need to take risks. And My Fair Lady is just short of taking that risk. Now again, this film is not awful. I wouldn't even say it's bad. It's definitely a good film. And if you haven't seen it, you should see it and add it to your library because, well, you know, it's that important to film history. But has it aged well? No, it hasn't. Honestly, by today's standard, My Fair Lady would be passed upon by many people. And it's not hard to see why. The relationship between the two characters and the way it develops just doesn't feel real and doesn't feel cohesive. And that's the huge problem I have with My Fair Lady. Now, do I recommend buying this or streaming it or avoiding all the other? Well, like I said earlier, you can't stream it. There's no streaming site that has it. You can rent it on Amazon as of right now, but if you're going to do that, you might as well just buy a copy. And for me, I bought the 50th anniversary Blu-ray edition. Now this has a bunch of special features, including some making ofs and how they restored the film, and it's all interesting stuff. It focuses a little bit more on the restoration as opposed to the original story of the making of the movie, but there's enough information here for me to say definitely pick up a copy. Not to mention, like I said, it is an important film to film history, as a lot of movies will quote this movie or just homage it altogether. So yeah, it's definitely a worthy addition to your collection if you don't already have it. And that's my opinions on My Fair Lady. They're probably not the popular opinion, but it's the way I view that movie, and that's how this show works. Anyway, next time, we go back to 1939 with Tower of London. See you then!